match we're going to see, as well as the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, these players are going to be playing best of 7 series, and I'm sorry, their best of 5 series. And akin to sort of the format we've been seeing, they're going to have a ban against one of their opponent's classes, and then they're going to play. So when a player loses with a deck, that deck's going to become locked. First player to have 3 of their decks that have not been banned locked loses the match, and then the winner goes on. But it's a double elimination bracket, so if you lose one of your matches, you're not gone, except for today we're in the losers bracket. So
Yeah, started. These guys are both ready to go. My apologies for taking a little time to explain a little too much about the background. Right off the get-go, we see a little bit of a faster start from Wuaschtsemme. It is that token druid that we saw yesterday, which has interesting card choices like Argent Commander, and now he's going to start off with an Argent Squire, which is much better than yesterday, because in the previous time we saw the druid deck, it started really slow, drawing the heaviest cards in his deck and getting Haunted Creeper, Argent Squire late into the game.
yeah, we noticed that yesterday. We were a little curious about what was going on with this druid build, and when it started to pan out, it made a lot more sense. But to start off, it was a little bit crazy, and this is one of the representations of druid we've seen. I think there's 3 different druid decks we've seen so far. One has been a very late game ramp, one has been a more traditional mid-range style, and of course this one, which has Violet Teachers, Argent Commander's, in my opinion, a little bit of a unique choice in token anyway. But his game plan seemed to be just very standard: play some early minions, get some early pressure, deal enough damage to put you in range of combo, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and that's what, I mean, people just forgotten how Druid still has that burst potential. As much as it's been easy to get caught in the hype of how Priest is doing well, Hunter's been dominating everything, but Druid and Miracle Rogue are still very potent decks in the tournament circuit, as you've seen the past couple of days. And, you know, when you're able to put pressure on Warrior and limit things like Shield Block, Shield Slam being effective, then you can start really pulling it out. Even if you are able to execute something like the Azure Drake with a Shield Block and Shield Slam, there's still ways to refill if you draw into Ancient of Lore, and that's how Druid continues to put on the gas.
Yep. This turn, by the way, is looks like it's going to be pretty rough for Wuaschtsemme. Theude seems like this is going to be his turn the corner turn. Wuaschtsemme is going to need some really big gas after this, because he's going to have a lot of armor. He's going to be taking out this Azure Drake. Wow, and he picks up a Deathbite too. But he's got Loatheb and he's got the Sludge Belcher start fighting against this deck. And to me, it feels like one of the weaknesses of this deck are these very strong mid-range sized minions, which is sort of what was confusing me about Token to begin with. Was that's where most of the power from Nax has gone into, is either more early game consistency or a lot of mid-game scaling. And that's exactly what you're going to see this game. So I think that at this point, Wuaschtsemme is at a pretty big disadvantage.
Yeah, cards like Force of Nature aren't, I mean, you eventually need it, but not at this moment. He wants a way to kind of continue to gas, and that's a little bit of the product of pushing out the Azure Drake early and unfortunately getting it taken out pretty easily. That's always been one of the drawbacks of tossing in the Azure Drake. As much as it's good for silence, it is a pretty fragile body. Sometimes, in the case of these control decks, which can easily deal with it. He drops Loatheb here instead of the Sludge Belcher immediately. And I guess he wants that board presence with that 5/5 body. But, you know, can you explain this play a little bit?
Well, it looked to me like he's a little bit concerned about Druid of the Claw coming in taunt and shutting off his potential for Sludge Belcher to get any attacks in. So this would be a pretty strong play against that, because he could just use the Loatheb and then Prill Taskmaster and finish it up and continue to go from there. But that's really the only thing I can see for why he would play Loatheb before playing Sludge Belcher, because you're not under any pressure of spells right now. Like, you're not worried about combo, you're not worried about Wrath. Like you're not going to see Wrath turn up. You play Sludge Belcher and go, oh my gosh, Wrath! Why didn't I think of that? So that's what it tells me he's thinking about. He also may just want a 5/5 on the board. That's sort of a possibility, and it's also just like an unintended consequence of playing Loatheb first. You're just like, You're trying to put yourself in a position to be able to deal with Druid of the Claw better, and at the same time, you're like, you get a better body instead of just a 3/5. But it does cost you some damage. But now's the time in the game where he has the most he's most able to afford that, because he had 30-something life at the time that he did it.
Sure, that's actually a good point. I do end up favoring the side that uses Loatheb to disrupt the opponent's turn when they're trying to do something like combo, especially since Loatheb at that stage is 5 mana. You can even draw something like Sludge Belcher and improve your board position that much more. if you combine it with some other kind of cards. But in this scenario, it's set him up so that way he can still have Sludge Belchers on a pretty easy board to deal with.
Oh
Because
yeah.
after this Death Bite activates and kills off the Keeper of the Grove, it seems like Sludge Belcher comes down and there's really nothing that can contest it.
Honestly, outside of a couple of ancient lores, this game might. I don't. I hate to call things early, but this game might just be done outside of some really heavy card draw effects for Wuaschtsemme.
Well, Druid's one of the best at rebounding if they draw that Ancient. He's coming up on that turn. But Harvest Golem and Haunted Creeper feel a little bit too weak at the moment.
Yeah, the combination of the Sludge Belchers with Faceless Manipulator with the Armor Smith, if you don't see a swipe this turn, he's gonna just get so much armor from this combination that he's gonna be back at 30. He's gonna have card advantage to go along with that. He's just literally undoing everything that Wuaschtsemme has already done, and he's kind of struggled to get to that point anyway. Gosh, I really, it's so hard to not swipe here, but maybe he just can't afford it at the end of the day. You see, this is how desperate he actually is to try to recover this game. He's using his hero power and paying 2 life just to deal a damage to the Sludge Belcher in hopes that that can begin to recover the game.
Yikes. Sylvanas also popping out, which can steal more of the minions' momentum. And make it a little bit more difficult for whenever things come out. Even if he draws into Brawl or whatnot, this can be really difficult to deal with.
I actually don't know if Sylvanas is better than Sludge Belcher here. Like, once you have the Armor Smith in play, I feel like you just want to keep developing the super taunts, but I guess he has a Fiery War Axe too. Wow, is he actually going to use Armor Smith here? Oh, wow, what the heck?
I mean, I like the idea of just continuing to control the board, so that way there's no power turns. Say he's holding, like say he draws into Power of the Wild or something like that. You just don't want to give the ability to develop it any further. Ancient of Lore off the top is exactly what Wuaschtsemme needed, though.
Yeah, it's a pretty big one right now. This is like, you're happy you drew this, but it sucks at the same time because your opponent just played Sylvanas.
Right. And that could have been Theude getting ahead of that too if he ends up dropping something like Ancient of Lore, because I think he's been watching the matches too, so he knows Wuaschtsemme is not running Ramp Druid.
Right.
So the biggest threat that this deck usually needs to answer is something like Ancient of Lore.
I kind of want to go back and talk about the Harvest Golem turn where the Armor Smith attacked, and I'm a little bit surprised by that. If this Armor Smith didn't get swiped, I would assume if I was in Theude's position that he doesn't have a swipe. As a result of that, I just want to keep this Armor Smith as healthy as possible and allow it to continue to recover the game. Like, I think Sludge Belcher's health is worth a lot less than Armor Smith's health in this kind of position. Namely because you have a second Sludge Belcher, but because Armor Smith is going to, at some point, quite literally put you out of reach of your opponent being able to kill you. And this is your second Armor Smith. So it makes a lot of sense to keep it out of like Keeper range or Wrath range and hope that it just gets a lot of work done, because it's so important to be putting yourself at such a high life total against decks like this to make sure that nothing really poor can happen. The lower this Armor Smith gets, the more it gets into like incidental swipe range. And then also cards, I was literally just about to mention this, cards like Whirlwind and Unstable Goal are also going to be picking off your own board as well. So as Armor Smith continues to get lower, it gets more vulnerable. That's the only reason why I think it was a little bit surprising to me. But at this point, he's already invested so much into it that it makes sense to keep going.
Well, sure. I mean, the fact is, Theude still needs to kind of piece together a way to kill his opponent. What Wuaschtsemme does. Theude is sitting pretty nice defensive cards. Faceless is also a really nice way to continue to build whatever legendary does come out, and he's able to kind of have it stick to the board. And it seems like he could play a little bit more liberally with health resource for a little bit of time while he does have that Armor Smith and second Sludge Belcher. So I don't mind kind of using the weapon here to kind of remove. Even though it feels like you want to be cautious against Chokinger in general.
It feels like that's like a really easy turn to go ahead and use Sylvanas. But using Sylvanas in that spot takes away a lot of your own pressure. And something that you're going to have to do is you're just going to have to end the game on your own. So when that's happening, you don't really want to just lose your Sylvanas. You'd rather just keep attacking and be putting pressure on your opponent.
Yep.
Because at this point, right, like he could have just easily traded Sylvanas in and saved a couple points of life. But that was like kind of the turn he needed, where his opponent didn't do much in terms of board development. And so he's able to pay his life from there and go forward with the aggression factor. So it's like, kind of undoing a little bit of the work he did, but you have to turn on the heat at some point, or you're just never going to actually kill your opponent. And since they're playing a deck that is very good at refueling and then rebursting, you have to start killing them. So that's why he's going through this position. And fortunately for Wuaschtsemme, he's got Blood Mage and Swipe, so this board position is going to turn around a little bit.
If it takes the Thaunos, then Theude can continue to draw and be able to continue to pull ahead. And Wuaschtsemme really needs to keep this Thaunos, not just because of the spell power or anything, because it draws. And he does manage to avoid it getting stolen, so that's a pretty nice turn here for Wuaschtsemme to be able to deal with Sylvanas and only give his opponent a 1-1.
Now, at that same time, you're still looking at a pretty strong board from Theude. Oh, wow.
It's going to get really dicey soon for Wuaschtsemme because he's going to be able to continue to pressure. And there's just no way, like, how can Druid deal with this Gromach if it just plops down on board?
It's going to be a good question. Now here's one for you. Sludge Belcher in this spot is okay, but I don't think it's worth facelessing. What do you think?
3-3. With the kind of nature that you have in your deck, I think it's best off keeping it. Plus, you never know if they have surprise things like Ragnaros, right? Some token druids have big legendary finishers because sometimes they just don't have enough. Even Cenarius, so that way they can use the buffs. Kelp the Zod was tested for a while, so I think having Faceless as your nuke button, right? Oh, he drew Innovate off the Thaunos. I was confused. I was like, oh, he didn't just draw that. Forced to use combo pieces in order to kind of remove is also extremely painful when you don't have the second copy as insurance.
I think this might be a Power of the Wild instead of a Savage Aura spot. Okay, so if you Power of the Wild in here... Not sure, actually. What happens if you use Power of the Wild instead of using Savage Orb?
Well,
no,
he doesn't do 2 extra damage. He loses 2 damage by using Power of the Wild. Oh, and he
overkilled by 2 damage as well.
But he couldn't use his hero power to push through the 1/2 taunt either. I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact that this is still almost an impossible minion to answer.
Yeah, this game is at this point kind of it's a little bit ended. If this Grommash doesn't come out this turn, this will be absurd. It's got lethal in 2 turns with this Grommash right here. Your opponent's hand has to be so strong against this. They have to have 6 points of damage in their hand to be able to deal with the Grommash after you activate it. Wow. This is a no-brainer.
He's gonna instead of you think killing off that Haunted Creeper was better than just attacking, trying to let your opponent...
yeah. You want to activate it so that way you can face this the next turn and kill him.
Oh, right. Forgot about the faceless.
Yeah. Alright, so that's gonna be game. Wuaschtsemme has no way to deal with this Grommash, and it's gonna get faceless manipulated, and 20 is gonna be going to the dome.
The light protects me.
Okay, well, it looks like Theude is able to weather the storm very easily. The Druid deck doesn't really seem to... It didn't really have the punch that we normally expected pre-next Rammus. And cards like Haunted Creeper didn't even really have much of an impact whatsoever. So, right off the bat, we have game number 1 deciding the winner's final. Keep in mind that these guys are both guaranteed top 3, but if you win this match, you get guaranteed top 2 and part of that prize pool of $3,000. Good job by Theude. He starts off the series with a 1-0 lead. Yeah,
that was sort of an example of the power that this with a little bit of an advantage, but his late game scaling is going to matter some. If he had drawn cards like Harrison Jones, those Sludge Belchers in that matchup, he probably would have been in a little bit of a disadvantage. And of course, Lotheb pulled a lot of weight going into turn 5, not allowing his opponent to use Wrath or Swipe or anything like that. So he was guaranteed a 5/5.
Speaking of Harrison Jones, he makes an appearance in this matchup, often a critical card to disrupt the turns of Miracle Rogue. It's not even always just Assassin's Blade, but sometimes, you sense that they have a dagger, they're trying to wait for a good time of Deadly Poison, and then you take away that 2 mana and you're able to draw into better cards if you don't have things like Sludge Belcher or Lotheb to answer. So Theude does have some good tools early on here. BGH, a little bit more on the dead side here, because the only thing you can really target is Van Cleave, but I still think that Theude has the tools that he'll eventually need to respond to Miracle Rogue.
We'll have to see how this game goes. This SI7 agent's going to put out a little bit more pressure than it normally would, simply because Theude has no answer right now, and he continues to have no answer. I'm not sure that Acolyte of Pain is the right response. Here's something that is interesting to note. It's hard to play Big Game Hunter in this matchup, and there's two reasons behind it. I used to always play it in here and just kind of hope they didn't have backstab and that it was attack for 4 damage. But something I noticed is that once you've played Big Game Hunter, the rogue players usually feels pretty free to play their own giant Van Cleave. So just if nothing else, the threat of Big Game Hunter usually keeps your opponent from doing that. But once you've shown it, that's sort of out of the question as far as they're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, it's usually necessary to hold it to kind of prevent that scenario from happening. Because sometimes they'll take a look at their hand and they'll feel desperate, and they'll just have to go for a big Van Cleave, is what their mindset will be. So sometimes they just go for it and you get off a big Game Hunter. But playing it again opens that floodgate, and that's where you start seeing another problem with playing it a little bit too early.
It's an excellent point, because it becomes a limiter removal where the BGH is now out. You basically open up another win condition for the Miracle Rogue if you try to get optimal value off of whatever you can with the BGH. Yep. So in a way, it's kind of keeping it in check, and then you're able to kind of play from there. By the way, the Fiery Warx double, 2 of them, is a little bit annoying to deal with, just because you're not able to kind of execute that all at the same time you want. Azure Drake coming out here, you've been mentioning it all the time since you've been talking to some players here, a Miracle Specialist, that how important it is for these matchups to sneak in the damage and to continue to chain draws, especially if you don't have Gadget Sand in your hand.
Yeah, it definitely is. This is going to be a Sludge Belcher turn, by the way. This is a perfect one for it. So he's lost 5 points of life, which frankly isn't very much. But Miracle's developed a pretty good hand leading up to this point. He's already got Leroy. He's got 2 copies of Preparation. If he finds an Auctioneer, this hand is going to be incredible. Oh, wow. Eviscerate was a really strong draw, too.
Yeah, Eviscerate and Shiv to even go through everything, and you can even keep Eviscerate and not have to utilize it. Still drawing off the Shiv. He picks up a Sap, which is also a really valuable card against a deck like Warrior.
A Cairn likely coming out and likely going down. Actually, he just made a dagger. How important is it, do you think, to just Harrison here to draw a card? Because this hand is not spectacular. Well, maybe Deathbite instead. Now this turn has gotten really interesting. There's so many different ways to take this turn. Cairn feels like, in hindsight, it feels like one of the worst ones. Because you're just going to get sapped. So often. Your opponent has not auctioneered, but they've drawn quite a few cards. Harrison feels painful here, too. You really want to pick off a poison when you use Harrison. Or just catch him on a turn where he's redaggered. Like, next turn he would attack for 1, he's going to dagger up again. So if you just wait a turn on Harrison, you're likely going to get a second card out of it. The issue that he's seeing is that he doesn't have any tools in his hand to really do anything. He's just got a couple weapons. So his turns are going to quite literally be attack your opponent's minion, armor up. And he just wants something better than that.
Yep. And, to kind of piggyback off your point of why Cairn is pretty bad, it's the fact that you place it down and then they stab while they developing their own board. Say they have another SI7 agent, and then you're even in worse position than you were previous turn because of the tempo that you lose there. So I think Theude making kind of like the mid-ground decision here. And what do you know? His opponent does have the deadly poison, and it seems like Wuaschtsemme is still looking for this gadgets hand. His hand, like you said, would be absolutely insane if he's able to get those chain draws off. But in the meantime, I think Theude now feels a little bit more comfortable dropping Harrison because he did show a little bit of patience in order to get these draws.
Wow. Armor Smith really changes things a bit, I think. This weapon is likely going to go for face right here.
Pick up the extra armor. I mean, these extra points of damage are so critical because the armor up really does put like a soft clock on the rogue player. Because that way you can't continue to just press for weapon damage, right? There's usually ways, like against classes like Shaman, even Hunter, they can't really heal. And so eventually, as much as you're trying to fight for board position, there is a noticeable countdown of damage. Versus Warrior, it's like there's always this rubber band where they shield block, armor up, and they have armor smiths, and they just all of a sudden gain like 8 to 12 health in a turn. How are you supposed to burn through that even if you have a couple of shadow steps?
Yep, that's a good point. His hand right now for Wuaschtsemme is looking pretty poor. He's gone through quite a few cards, hasn't seen an auctioneer. So this is one of those games where Rogue can oftentimes, it falls victim to itself. And, It's what's looking like it's happening more and more here. We saw Harrison come out just to draw 2 cards, taking out the Rogue's Dagger, and then of course Blade Flurry is going to come out here. He's not excited to use the Blade Flurry here, but he's got to deal something about the 6 damage on the board. And he's, almost more importantly, he's got to take care of an Armor Smith. Ooh, Sylvanas. Sylvanas and Cairn, and look at the hand from Wuaschtsemme. It's quickly deteriorated into this just mess of utility spells with nothing left to do.
It's like the old school Miracle Rogue, right? Before they started adding Farseers and Drakes. It's like you just all you had was the anticipation of waiting for Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Ooh,
And Conceal. I mean, he's 1 card off from a Royal Flush, in my opinion.
6, 12, 18, 22. Is there any merit to attacking with Leroy and concealing it here?
Are you under pressure of dying? I mean, if you feel like you only have 2 turns to play, absolutely. That's the calls that we've seen guys like RDU and Reynad try to make in these tight situations. And it works out for them, but a lot of times it's a little bit too early to call, because if you draw a Gadgetzan right afterwards, oh man, how bad do you feel wasting everything.
Wow, the Cairn. I'm really surprised by that. That's going to cost him a lot of damage. I'm really surprised he's not jamming down Deathbite here. Also, what the heck is going on? Count your damage.
Yeah, I think the Deathbite is a good pressure point, but I think he wants to armor up. I think that's also his primary concern. And if you're going to armor up and play Sylvanas, you only can slide in the what's it called?
Well, a larger concern should have just been counting his damage. If he plays Deathbite, he's going to drop his opponent to 18 this turn, and then 14 plus 9, 13. Okay, so his clock doesn't matter. That's really that's what he needed to do, is count his clock. And I mean, it's possible he just done that during his opponent's turn, but that was an awfully fast turn to decide that you wanted to armor up instead of playing Deathbite.
Fair enough.
I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just, you want to take your time with spots like this. I mean, both of these players yesterday, not to really, bring up old stuff or feel like I'm being mean, but both of these players missed lethal yesterday. So I'd like to see both of them slow down now that they've had a night's rest and a refresh this morning.
If he drew you into something like Gromosh 2, it's important to have Deathbite on its last charge. So that way he can immediately activate it, put out the damage. Conceal pops out. And I think Wuaschtsemme really wants to protect it in case he draws something like second Shadow Step. But Shield Block continues to complicate things, especially if you see a Conceal of your opponent. You feel like he wants to set up for a way to potentially win. Conceal on a board like this is usually an act of desperation.
Yeah, this would strike me as really strange. If I was in Theude's seat, I would feel very pressured right now. Makes a lot of sense to be taking Shield Block into play over Sylvanas right now. You just want to get as far out of your opponent's reach as possible. And look at this, he's even got a big game hunter. I think this is good at this point. Your opponents use Blade Flurry, they've used Fan of Knives, you have an Armor Smith out. Now's the time
for you. Still setting up for lethal.
Yep.
Okay, back over to Wuaschtsemme, still waiting for Gadgetzan or something. And it's Loteb, which isn't the exact 5 mana cost card he needed, but still a pretty decent one.
Yeah, this hand is looking pretty brutal. I think you're just going to have to give your opponent 2 more armor.
Yeah, gosh, how valuable is that second Armor Smith? Being able to come out and annoy your opponent so that way he has to make unoptimal choices of dealing with the board.
The issue with this game really has been the lack of Auctioneer from Wuaschtsemme's perspective. He's had 6 cards sitting in his hand for the entire game, not doing anything. So,
yeah, I think in these games where you're not, in these games when you're not outdrawing your opponent, like Warrior's actually outdrawing you, essentially. In terms of the pace, right? If he's matching you card for card, then your card for card, your cards are weaker than your opponent's because preparation doesn't stack up against something like Shield Slam, and Shadow Step doesn't do anything for a long time to late game. And comparing to like a weapon, you're just not really doing anything. So the Rogues' density of what they're able to do is actually pretty loose because they need Gadgetzan to tie everything together. And now Wuaschtsemme is sitting with equal cards, but very low impact.
Looks to me like it's just shield slam.
Yeah, minimize the damage and continue to press. Rogue's at 15 health. Develop even the death spite. And
I think
then
there's also,
you can also be threatening lethal the following turn if you draw into Gromosh.
I think there's also a lot of merit to using Cairn and Armorsmith to take out the Loatheb and developing Sylvanas.
Are you afraid of second sap though? And then you start taking damage and.
Well, remember the Cairn's going to come back as the Bane, and then you have Sylvanas and Bane on the board. So it's not that I think that's a better play. It's something to think about.
Sure.
There's actually a lot of alternatives here to just using Shield Slam. Shield Slam it's the most direct answer, and it kind of uses the least amount of stuff to get things done. Attack the 3/3. That's sort of strange. Oh, he almost missed an attack on Armorsmith there too.
See, if he didn't attack it, he'd be at 27 health. No, 26 health. Excuse me. And his opponent had 4 damage, 22 damage from the hand, which is Leroy double Shadow Step and like Eviscerate. So yeah, I think he's still being extremely cautious, just in case his opponent had the exact 4 or 5 cards to kill him.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he still represents lethal anyways if he draws into Gromosh, but he is 1 damage off as of right now. Oh, finally.
Why did
Better
he
late
prep
than
the Shiv
never, I
there, by the way?
suppose.
Did he prepped the Shiv there, right? I'm not just crazy? Yeah, he preparation Shiv. Why did he prep the Shiv with 10 mana? That's sort of strange. Now what to eviscerate? This is kind of a tough choice too. He's got to figure out whether or not he wants to, whether he can even begin to fight for card advantage, or life totals, or what have you. And it looks like he's just going to let the Armorsmith live. Not really much choice to it. And he's got to start doing something. He's running out of time with the rope.
Well, he ran out of he ran out of things like preparation, and he doesn't even have a conceal. But he does have a giant Van Cleef, assuming his opponent doesn't have it. But
You got.
I don't know. It's really difficult.
You're so desperate. Yep.
Yeah. But then your opponent, if he has
yeah.
execute, it's done. 14-14 is intimidating, but
Oh, we can execute his own Sylvanas.
how does he damage? Oh, wait, the Death Spite. That's right. You Death Spite, execute your Sylvanas, steal his 14-14 Van Cleef.
Get him, Artosis. Punish him.
Poor Artosis. He doesn't have to be casting or playing, and people still remember him.
Well, this is a 1 damage off lethal spot. But
And then you can go for a 50-50 coin flip. You play the Death Spite execute combo, and then the Ragnaros can come out to decide the game.
Right. That's exactly what he's going to do. Whether it hits the auctioneer or whether it hits his face at that point, you're totally fine and usually winning a game.
Not to mention, you're still gaining armor.
Yep.
So you're going to be sitting at, let's see, 6. If you play Ragnaros,
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, no. Attacking face is awful here. You're going to just attack the Gadgetzan auctioneer, and then attack face with Death Spite and then execute Ragnaros. That would have been really miserable.
Right. You're right. No, I mean, it's instead of giving him 50-50 chance to live, you just go for the 100% chance to kill.
Oh my gosh. We missed lethal. We're awful.
Oh no, we caught it before the turn ended. So
Oh my gosh.
It's safe. I think it's the same if you attack Gadgetzan right now. Wait,
What the?
huh? If you attack Gadgetzan with Death Spite, it accomplishes the same thing anyways. So he still had a chance to save it, right?
Oh my gosh. Hey, but Kit Kats didn't lie today. That's good news.
Nice.
I mean, this is I guess it's effectively lethal. He's at 30, or he's at 28 HP. His opponent's got 4 cards. This is just maximum BM is what this is.
It is. The long con. I like it. Theude's going to jump out to a 2-0 lead with Warrior, and Wuaschtsemme can't do anything. He's got 18, 21 damage. Even if he had maximum mana, he had 23.
So he could
and that's not
poison
enough.
SI the Armorsmith, and then use 2 Shadow Steps to take out the Bane. And you're not dead, you just don't have anything left. So...
I say you deadly poison, Leroy attack face, SI7 yourself for the for the loss.
Oh yeah, you shadow step Leroy, and then you attack him, and you shadow step Leroy, and then you attack him, and then you just SI7 yourself. That's a good call.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think any of those cards would be surprising anyways. I think Wuaschtsemme is also trying to calculate, is there any way I can survive? But we know that if he doesn't even put anything out, there's very little chance that he can win from this position because his opponent's gaining life still.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Well, he's gonna try to stay alive, and I can't blame the guy for that.
Also, I guess you can see more cards from Warrior.
Yeah, it's always important to try to see as many cards as you possibly
For
can.
example,
was good.
if for some reason Theude drops like Black Knight, at least now he knows, oh, he plays Black Knight. I have to be careful about that in future games. Okay, well.
Oh, and that's the Sudoku.
There we go. We weren't sure if Wuaschtsemme was going to keep in the game, but it looks like he's going to tap out here.
Yep, that's going to do it. So, it lacked a lot of mid-game scaling, which is something you're just often going to see when you're playing Token Druid. Again, your deck's got like Haunted Creepers and Ardent Squires and stuff in it. And sometimes you'll draw those in the mid-game instead of drawing the 4 and 5 cost and 6 cost minions that you're used to drawing when you play a more traditional style Druid. But I think a very well played game, and Handlock's going to come out now. Handlock can give Warrior a lot of trouble sometimes. I haven't seen this matchup too much since Deathbite's come out, but I think that Sludge Belcher would give the nod more to Handlock than it would to Warrior, simply by virtue of the fact that it gives you the extra stuff that you needed to fight through their removal suite instead of the other way around. Handlock was never really too concerned about the mid-sized minions. They just kind of use Giants and Twilight Drakes to push through as they saw fit, which both of those cards, by the way, are in Wuaschtsemme's hand right now. This is a fantastic opener as far as he's concerned.
Does Theude think that this is Zoo? No, there's no way. He passed, and then he's coining out Armorsmith. Coining out Armorsmith against Handlock, you feel like is a priority, so that way you can get ahead of the armor up process. I'm a little confused why he's so antsy to push out this Armorsmith.
Yeah, that is a little confusing. Really,
you want to put him on a 30-turn clock? Is that what it is?
Well, maybe he knew he was going to draw a second Armorsmith. And even then, it's kind of like, it's okay. Maybe he's trying to do something. Maybe he's trying to do something weird, like hoping his opponent will use a Soulfire.
Oh, okay. Sure. Position your opponent for the opportunity to mess up. By the way, if Theude doesn't draw Execute, he is going to have a very difficult time dealing with these Azure Drakes that can come out. Azure Drake gives a lot of trouble because the health scales so much farther than even a shield block, shield slam can be able to get you in turns 4 and 5. And then even so, you don't even have enough damage because BGH can reach past all those things and kill off Giants, but not the Twilight Drake. So it usually gives a nightmare of a time for Warrior to deal with these 4/9s, 4/10s.
Yeah, it's a good point you make too. Once I get a minion on the board, your armor is likely going to start getting shredded very often because they're very mindful of the fact that you're trying to get to shield slam range. So if you take a look at something like a 9 health Drake,
wow,
like this is a nightmare to have to deal with. Wow, look at this though.
This is important top deck. He can gain 4 armor and draw 2 cards, and then do 3 damage. Still going to be a little bit short if he draws Shield Slam because you can't armor up Shield Slam, but still, this Cruel Taskmaster opens up options.
Yeah, you're going to find a better spot to use Cruel Taskmaster. That's really what I'm thinking.
Deathspite.
You know, when he plays a Deathspite here, though, he is threatening the idea that this Acolyte could draw a lot of cards. So, I mean, this is just, I think, a better choice, though.
I think so. Let's see what he draws. Does he draw into an Execute? Another Acolyte. So it's important to get these card engine draws, because now you've got 2 cycle cards and a potential to draw 3. Fiery Vorax. So he's not going to be able to deal with the Drake this turn, which is very nice for Wuaschtsemme, and he knows his opponent doesn't have something really simple like Execute to kill off it just yet.
I wonder how concerned he is with something like Big Game Hunter. Because he saw it in the Druid game.
I mean, the longer the game goes, the more likely he has it, right? And if he's been studying his opponent, maybe he kept in his opening hand. So these guys, they're a lot more cautious about how they approach it. So I think you are very wary of it. I think your Drakes are a higher threat anyways. You haven't seen Execute. It's a stronger likelihood that he would draw into Shield Slam. So I think putting out the Drake's a higher priority because it'll have more health than the Giant.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to pull removal to it, and then just following up with a Giant, hoping his opponent just doesn't have a big game hunter afterwards, and so just the bigger power sticks to the board.
All right, well, Theude finally can start whacking back. How does he choose to do it, though? Because again, he doesn't have access to the premium removal spells, and the weapons are kind of redundant over each other.
This is a tough turn.
Yeah, it's not pretty because you still feel really unsafe just dropping something like Sludge Belcher because that can get eaten up easily, and you get no value off of it. These Drakes are terrorizing the board, and Theude doesn't have the responses he needs at the moment. He's opting to go for a very defensive play. He's going to take some of his own armor out in order to clear some of this.
Yeah, I think this is probably his best option. I think this is first by, now that I'm looking at it, quite a significant margin, and then probably Harrison Jones is his second best play. Something I talk about a lot is using your cards that are not very good before using your cards that are actually pretty good. And this is kind of one of those spots. Fiery War Axe is seeing a significant downgrade in power when you have Deathbite in hand and vice versa. And Harrison Jones, of course, not pulling a lot of weight in this matchup. So he's very happy to get any amount of value from it, basically while he can. So I think the priority goes to the weapon because you need to be using your weapons and you don't have all the time in the world to use them. Where Harrison Jones, pretty much any turn you play it, it's just going to be a random 5/4. And that's kind of fine in its own right. But the weapons, on the other hand, if you get stuck with weapons in your hand, you have no chance to utilize them further. So I think it makes a lot of sense to play it first, and then he does a second Death's Bite. Oh, that's ugly.
Oh,
my
BGH off the
gosh.
top.
Now
That's
that
nice
is a
for
huge
Theude.
draw.
Now he has an answer immediately.
That is a
And he's
huge
able to
game
continue-
hunter.
Yep. Huge game hunter. HGH. It feels like it. Because now all of a sudden it's an 8 damage battle cry. Not bad.
I've got the gains in my sight.
Oh man, if
Wow,
only.
and he picks up an Execute too.
So there we go. I mean, you could say that Theude was struggling for a while and he didn't have these removal spells that you're often looking for early game against Handlock. So finally having access to it is really important. There's a little bit of debate whether or not he should attack into it and enable Molten Giant for the following turn, so he opts not to. The 1 damage is not worth it.
Yeah, this is a deliberate non-attack by Theude, by the way. This isn't he missed a damage or he missed 3 damage with his Fiery War Axe. If he puts his opponent down to 17 or lower, his opponent has the option to play Molten Giant next turn. And so rather than deal a point of damage, he wants to take that option away.
So many possibilities.
All right, well, Wuaschtsemme, let's see what he has in store. Other than his Mountain Giant, that was pretty much the only threat he had. His second best option after this Azure Drake is pretty much a Silence Watcher, which he's going to use the Shadow Flame and press for damage, but this Execute will allow Theude to stabilize and start turning the tides a little bit.
Yep. Ooh, Alex Strauza. Not that that's like a huge deal in terms of its Battlecry effect, but a big 8/8 minion at this point can really impact the board. You're getting closer to one of these turns, by the way, where he's going to have to make a push for damage at some point.
You think so? You think the Warrior can't just outlast the Handlock sometimes?
It's possible, but I mean, look at his hand right now.
Yeah, double Death Bite.
Yep.
And Alex Strauza. It seems like that burn alone allows you to kind of kill him if you can piece everything together. Wuaschtsemme, if he's not drawing to his threats, he's drawing into things like his combo pieces. Leroy is in his hand now with Power Overwhelming, but it's not very pretty. Double Siphon Soul sits there, most likely having to go down on some of the bigger creatures, and Harrison Jones doesn't feel like a great target. Are you willing just to use Soulfire on it?
No, because my hand's pretty good. I'm missing some small pieces to make this happen. You may have to Soulfire this, though. Like, you really don't want to Siphon Soul.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, this is tough. The far left card in his hand, by the way, is Mortal Coil, so it's no use.
What did he lose? A Defender of Argus? It's okay,
That's
I guess
probably-
he still has another Taunter.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the better ones to lose, is Defender of Argus.
Yeah, I think Mortal Coil was also okay to be tossed because there's not many creatures that have 1 health for you to pick off anyways.
Is there any merit to shield blocking here? Or are you just comfortable with your current hand? Because this hand feels like to me it's like pretty poor. Also, I think that Theude can conclude here, by the way, that his opponent doesn't have a Molten Giant. Because he had 6 mana, and Molten Giant costs 6 right now, and he didn't play it. So if there's a turn for Push for Lethal, now would start being it.
That's a good conclusion to make. Wuaschtsemme will have to deal with the Sludge Belcher. Again, still pretty annoying. Trying to draw into threats, but he only picks up another support card. The Sun Fury Protector. That's not going to cut it right now, because again, what he's doing is just answering the board. And he's got situational response cards.
What does he want to draw here?
And so you use both Azure Drakes. Does he use both Mountain Giants? Only 1 Giant. Oh, well,
Ooh.
he gets a Molten Giant. So he's going to use a Siphon Soul and then set up an opportunity to use Molten Giant the following turns because he realized it's very easy just to piece together a few points of damage. Just like something simple like a cool Taskmaster would be able to kill off that Molten Giant for nothing. This gives Theude the opportunity, once again, to recognize weakness, like you mentioned before. And Alexstrasza, in fact, even before Alexstrasza, what do you think about using Loteb to set up for a turn where Alexstrasza can even be more impactful?
I think that you just want to get Alexstrasza on the board. I think if your opponent wants to use Siphon Soul again on this turn, I think you're just fine with that.
So just like a gain 1 health, but you get the second removal piece out of the way.
Yeah, I think the more important part is that you get the removal out of the way now, and you're committing your opponent to using 6 mana also. So every single time you do something, you take the initiative away from your opponent. It's kind of akin to playing Lotheb, honestly, because if you play Lotheb in this spot, your opponent just won't siphon soul it very often. But if you play Alexstrasza in this spot, your opponent's going to siphon soul it, I think, pretty often. Sludge Belcher may change that, though. This may feel like a turn where he thinks it necessary to take a bit of a risk. Play something like Molten Giant and Sludge Belcher in hopes that the Sludge Belcher will eat an Alexstrasza attack, and then he can recover with a Molten Giant play instead of just kind of, again, playing it turn by turn and hoping that nothing gets done.
Sure.
He's got to
It's a
find a
little
way
bit
to
hard
take
to
initiative.
risk, though,
Yeah.
because if he has Grommash, then setting up a Sludge Belcher might be just as easy as death because of the 8 damage plus whatever Grommash ends up being.
Right.
And he can dedicate just 1 piece of removal like Shield Slam into something else. So he's going to go for Siphon Soul and, oh, no. Hesitation once again. I mean, these turns are tough because it's more even about how to survive. It's how can you last because you have Leroy Powerwhelming in hand and you have a Molten Giant. What's the opto? Wait, what? Did he just tap and he burned one of his own cards? Oh my god, that is an absolute disaster. Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no, Grommash has come to the hand, so that's another way to activate it.
Oh my gosh. I'm stunned right now.
Well, I think if you're Theude, you recognize your opponent is stumbling a little bit. This is not the first
Yeah.
time I've seen something like this. RDU at IEM Shenzhen, kind of nervous, accidentally tapped when he had 10 cards because he was looking for another answer, and he ends up burning something. Actually, I think it was a Farseer as well, coincidentally enough.
Yeah, this is something that, again, we touched on yesterday, and that I continue to talk about, and will probably always continue to talk about when you have this many people watching you, and this is kind of like your first go under the spotlight. You are nervous, and it does affect the way you play. It doesn't matter what anyone wants to say or tell you. People are going to be nervous when they're in that sort of spot, especially with the nature of Twitch chat, and they're reading those comments, and they're like, "Oh gosh, these people hate me," and it just you're not going to feel. You're not going to feel too good at the end of the day when you end up making mistakes, and that sort of mindset will compound. And then you'll end up making mistakes because you're literally thinking of not making mistakes. And so instead of thinking of the game, you're thinking of how to not make mistakes.
How's the best way to not look stupid causes you sometimes to do exactly
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, double Belcher coming to the hand of Wuaschtsemme. I would also recommend for him to not tap in this position. Tap and you burn faceless and you just facepalm and concede. That it just feels like that situation for Wuaschtsemme. Double Sludge Belcher, I think, is his ticket to surviving this next turn, by the way. Because I don't even think this is enough for him to survive at the moment. Death's Bite will activate.
Shields up.
Oh, the second taunt. So if you Death's Bite, Shield Slam, and press through, that's not enough, I think. Because you'll be short by 2 damage. Or am I miscounting?
Looks to me like I'm not seeing lethal here.
Yeah, I think he's short just a couple of damage because the Gromosh is at only 10 damage.
He's short of pushing through the Sludge Belcher also. Right?
Oh, he's 1 damage off lethal by my count. Unless there's a way to get around the Sludge. This Sludge Belcher double taunt is so annoying.
You attack the Sludge Belcher. Yeah, you attack the Sludge Belcher with Loatheb. It makes a 1-2. You attack the 1-2
with your Death.
Yeah, that doesn't work. And then, so if you attack it with... Yeah, there's no way to do it. He's just 1 damage off lethal.
Okay.
Unfortunate.
But he can use this opportunity to set up another strong board and force your opponent to have something like Shadow Flame with a second Molten Giant or to clear it.
He's really looking at facelessing this Molten Giant. I can't blame him. This is going to make you kind of vulnerable to a last Molten Giant and then Shadow Flame, but that's the risk I think you have to take. This way also keeps your Loatheb a little bit healthier.
Yeah, I think so.
I think this is probably the best way he could have played this turn.
Yeah, I think you're kind of okay with something like Leroy Shadow Flame also, just because that destroys one of their win conditions. Loatheb off the top for Wuaschtsemme. Keep in mind that this is more than enough to kill him. He needs a way to kind of set up defense line. Power Overwhelming in Shadow Flame is not even enough either. For just on the because ideally you like to set up a turn where you can use like Shadow Flame and then drop something. But he'll be short just killing this Molten Giant. 7 health. Pretty clutch. Oh wait, no. Oh no, he doesn't have enough ability to because that 7 health on Molten Giant's annoying.
Well, he can always Mortal Coil it, but it's like he's thinking to himself, like, do I really have to use Power Overwhelming, which is basically my only way to try to kill my opponent at this point, to clear the board so that I don't die, which basically kills me anyway because Gromosh exists.
It's a game of survival. It's no longer a game of positioning and jockeying for advantage. And Wuaschtsemme, he's lost his ability to kind of answer something. I mean, you know what? Even something as simple as having his Farseer, if he didn't burn it, he would be able to play it after everything's been said and done with the Mortal Coils and the Shadow Flames being played. That's also kind of disappointing. Because Wuaschtsemme at least would have something to do guaranteed, versus now, the best drop he has is a Sun Fairy Protector on the Mortal Coil.
Which looks like he's not going to be dropping anything.
Yep.
Oh gosh, this is
Would being at 14 health matter?
No, this is lethal, this is lethal. Oh my gosh, because he can play Gromosh, attack for 4, drop the Fiery War Axe, which kills his own weapon, triggers the Death Rattle, and attacks for 10.
Oh, that's so smart. You're right.
Gosh.
That is, I didn't see that. And it's because, you know, Death's Bite's still a little bit foreign to some people. And Theude, again, acting very quickly.
Oh my gosh. This match has been...
It's been sloppy, to say the least.
Yeah.
I think Theude might have realized, too. I think he realized,
too.
His hand. Yeah. He's like, God damn it, I keep missing this lethal.
Oh my gosh, that is brutal.
And you know what? With Sludge Belcher and Loatheb potentially filling the board, still not going to be that easy to burn through everything and end it. So Wuaschtsemme is still in it.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be able to put together some semblance of a board here. Is there any merit to using Mountain Giant instead?
And taunting up.
Yeah, this looks like he wants to play Lotheb if he's doing it this way, though.
The
He
2
just
life
wanna
on
get-
the low tep is
Oh,
really nice.
look at this. He's just going to set up a really big defense at this point.
Sure.
This is actually really smart.
Black Knight and Shield
Wow.
Slam still not enough to cut through everything. Okay, so Theude, he is struggling a little bit to kind of close out these games. What a way to kind of start off the series if you're faltering a little bit by catching the 100% lethals.
Yep.
Or is this guy just the master of very intricate BM finishes that we're just not catching? He is so far ahead of all of us that we have no idea.
I'm going to guess it's nerves, and as a result, a little bit of misplay.
All right. Emma also has more taunts. And keep in mind, a second Molten Giant that he picks up will also be free from this point on.
This 1-2's taunting him. Staring him in the face.
Life tap. If he pokes at Molten Giant, still really big.
Ow.
Mountain Giant coming down will get shield slammed. And that's actually not enough still to kill him. He's still 1 damage off at the moment. Theude's 1 damage off lethal. The Whirlwind would end the game.
Not quite this turn. Shield slam for sure. Attack. Oh, he doesn't have another taunt giver in hand. I think this might be too much pressure.
What now?
Well, hold on. But it's still not over yet. He might pick up. Like another defender of Argus. And he did lose 1 Stern Fury protected though, so he still has 1 taunt giver at least if he's playing a conventional handlock. Okay, Theude, he can go again. He can use his Fire War Axe to clear these taunts. The Black Knight to push through, but his Gromosh naked is just 4 damage, so he's gonna have to play a little bit more patiently.
You know, I don't know if he has to play more patiently.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this.
That's right, he's seen second Shadow Flame already, and second Siphon Soul, so maybe he doesn't have to. Wait, at least to play Gromosh.
Right. And he's going to activate, and I imagine... Yeah, he's going to lose opponent 1.
I like it. You know, he also played around Soulfire on the... What's it called? The Black Knight.
Oh my gosh. I think that's going to do it now. Let's figure this out. Okay.
Even life tap. Oh, he does
Well,
life tap.
he can life tap. It's just going to be losing if he chooses the life tap. And a good 3-0 from Theude, you know,